How do you define your workplace style? Which is the question of the day. I recently came across this LinkedIn article, which populated a list and a survey from the Washington Post regarding workplace do's and don'ts related to the way that we can, should, or should not dress when we are on our way to the office, which is something to think about, right? In today's hybrid work environment, well, particularly for information and knowledge workers, we all have some flexibility in terms of the way that we dress. And so the conversation, in my opinion, comes in the form of how comfortable do you feel showing up and showing out to the workplace? Now, back in my day when I was working in digital ad sales, digital media, I was the kind of guy that was coming in with a healthy balance of comfort and style. So certainly came in with the cotton polo and perhaps a nice pair of jeans and some shoes for a typical workday. Whereas if I had a meeting, or a client-facing meeting, at least, that's when, I would get a little bit more dressed up, right? Whereas I might put on a button-up, I might wear some slacks and definitely some dress shoes. And then, depending on what was going on in the professional sphere, I should say, I might put on a suit for like an industry event or, something along those lines, right? And that's big. First impressions make a big difference. Whereas if you work for an organization that requires you to wear a uniform, that's a little bit of a different scenario where you don't have, a choice in a lot of different ways, right? If you want the job or not. Now here in 2025, when we're, paying attention to the rise of hybrid and remote work, the question begins to beg, how comfortable is too comfortable, right? Where, if you are showing up for Zoom conferences in, your bathrobe and some basketball shorts, most of us would probably say that makes us feel a little bit uncomfortable, right? But, something to consider is that most of us, when we're hopping on these Zoom calls, for example, you're only looking at us from the waist up, typically. What's that guy's name? Mr. Incredible or what's the guy's name from Shark Tank? I can't really remember his name. Mr. Marvelous. One of the things that I see from him all the time is he will be doing these really amazing interviews with major firms, like CNBC, and, he's taking these calls from his house, and it's, business up top where he's wearing a blazer, a white shirt, a tie. And then on the bottom, when he's like capturing his content, you see he's totally wearing a pair of shorts and he's got maybe some flip-flops on, right? Which, creates a little bit of mystery that, in terms of the way that he represents himself to the professional world. But then, you're almost getting a little bit of a behind the scenes look, when you're engaging with some of his content, when he's not, representing himself on other people's platforms. So, something to think about here in 2025. How comfortable do you feel, getting dressed up or wearing what you want to wear? I certainly would encourage you to balance a healthy mix of being fashion forward while also being mindful of, comfort. It also really matters, in my opinion, to dress for the season, both in terms of like the colors that you're wearing, as well as, again, just like dressing to either, keep cool or to stay warm. Here in the desert, it's 100 degrees plus during the summertime. And so you will catch me wearing my business professional shorts on a daily basis. If I don't have any client facing meetings, you'll probably catch me in a linen or cotton shirt, right? With colors that are probably going to be refracting the sun, right? Whereas, if I were taking a meeting in LA or New York or, somewhere else during, some of the other seasons, I would certainly dress for that. What's your style? How do you like to dress for work? What are some of your best tips and practices for someone who is having this conversation with themselves? Drop a comment in the chat and let us know. Peace.